Family is everything. My dad didn't get a chance to consider it. He died before I was even in the picture. As far as I knew, all I ever had was my little brother Kelvin and my mama Terry. Although you best believe if we ever called her anything besides Mom or Mama, she would chew our ear off. We relied on each other for strength, especially hers after Grandma died. Growing up in the streets of South LA, we didn't have much other choice. She would wake us up every morning and get us dressed for school. Mom was our bus driver in the mornings, taking Kelvin to the elementary school and me to middle school. Her wages couldn't afford us the best clothes, so the moment we stepped off the bus, you best believe that we were struggling. My shoes were barely hanging on my feet, and I hadn't had a good shower in a few days, but Mom kept reinforcing that what mattered most was getting our education. She worked herself to the bone for us. I didn't know it at the time, but after she got done with the bus route, she would bus tables at a diner just down the street from our school. The only way I found out was because one day I played hooky, stopped in there for a bite to eat. When Mom saw me, I had probably been crying for a good 20 minutes. Some girl wrote a nasty note and stuck it on my locker, and I just wanted to hide from the world. When we locked eyes, I didn't know if she was going to tear me up or hold me in her arms. I think a lot about those days. What with the world the way it is now. I have kids of my own now, and I keep telling them things have gotten better. Then I turn on the news, and it feels like I'm right back in 7th grade again. There's one experience that always comes to mind, and one I'm going to share with you now. That's the one I often tell people about when I had something I really needed to say. Given what the world is like now, I guess I feel like sharing it with anybody who will listen. It was a week after Easter and Mom had lost her job. Our grandma had died not long back, and ever since then it seemed like we had lost our way, especially her. Working double shifts at the diner had exhausted her to no end, and she wound up missing the afternoon route. Rather than hear her out, her manager showed her the door, and Mom picked us up on foot outside our schools. For a 12-year-old black kid, nothing was scarier than walking home from school, even with your mom holding your hand. Kids had to keep their eyes open for drive-bys, and if it wasn't that, there were fights all up and down the streets. The day wasn't any different. We were heading to our community center, which housed our local Baptist church, for everything communion, and we heard gunshots rattle across the street. Mom held us close, and we hurried into service to find a pew in the back to listen to Pastor Ken. For some reason I can't explain, I remember every detail of the sermon that day. It was about the Good Samaritan, how the priest and the Levite left a fellow Jew by the roadside, left him for dead. Made me think of my own circumstances. Why was it that nobody was helping us? I knew Mama asked these questions because she was behind on tithes. Even that day after service, Pastor Ken was reminding her of our dues. Think of your children, Terry. Don't you want them to have a good relationship with God? He whispered. If I have to buy God's love for my children, it doesn't sound like that is the type of God I want to worship. Mom shouted back. She grabbed our hands and stormed out of the church, never looking back. I like to think that Pastor Ken meant well. But times were tough. Not just for us, but the whole neighborhood. Just on the way home, we heard police sirens and shots at least 3 times. It felt like we were in a war zone. God had left South Central Los Angeles. That's what Aunt Naomi said. Mom talked to her a lot over tea, both of them gossiping about the latest news. She lived down the block in a rougher part of the city, but never seemed too worried. At the time, I didn't fully understand the significance of names like Rodney King, George Holliday. All I knew for sure is that Mama was worried. Tensions were high in the entire community. I keep telling you what you need to do, Terry. Stop wasting your prayers and get yourself a loa. The idol keeps your family safe. I've had mine for over a year, and since then I haven't had a single break-in. Papa Legda kept me safe, she said as she fumbled with her necklace. It reminded me of the tiki statues we had around New Year's. I remember thinking how amazing it looked when the light hit it just right. Naomi, enough of your voodoo nonsense. It isn't nonsense. You just don't understand the magic like I do. I remember Mama sighing as she finished making us supper. And where do I even find a loa around here? Look around your shops, your stores. That one over on 44th should have them this time of year. Even if I did want one, I couldn't afford it, sister. I lost my job today, she said. For a long time, Naomi didn't speak. And then she said something vulgar that I didn't understand, but it still made me laugh. But she didn't press the issue anymore. After supper, we took our baths, and we got ready for bed, just like usual. Mom said she would try to walk us to school the next day, and we needed to get some rest. We said a prayer together, and I remember Mama asked God to protect us. But that never happened. As we lay there and morning peeked through the blinds, we were trying to push out noise of the world around us, and then a knock came on our door. It was Mrs. Lau, the apartment landlord. Miss Terry, you're late today. Is everything okay? The older Korean woman asked softly. Behind her, we heard two men arguing in the stairwell, and Mom did her best to keep the door chain on. Two men we've seen in the streets, and Mama knew since they were children. I'm sorry, Miss Lau. I didn't get a chance to come and talk to you. It's been a day. The kids are sleeping, and... Before Mom got two more words out, the first man pulled a knife out. Mama yelled, "Damar, stop this nonsense!" Without even hesitating, Mama ran out to try and stop the fight. That's just the type of woman that she was. I remember hopping out of bed and watching as this grown woman stepped between two gang members. My heart was pounding. Mrs. Lau made a shriek. In the chaos that followed, Mom got sliced in the shoulder. Damar looked mortified by what happened and started to tend to her when he heard sirens blasting off in the distance. He said, "I'm sorry, Miss Johnson. I'm so sorry." And ran away. It all happened so fast. And then Kelton was trying to run them down as they both fled. And Mama fell to the ground. "Oh my lord," Mrs. Lau said, coming to my mom's aid. I saw Kelton squeezing his fists together, and then he ran down the stairs. Mama screamed his name, but he wasn't listening. I followed instead. I tackled him on the alley outside our apartment. He kicked me for a minute, telling me to get off, but I was so scared that those men would come back I held him down. "Get off me!" Kelton shouted. "What's wrong with you?" "I'm going to the store. Find Mom something that can help her get better. I'm tired of Mama always suffering and us not able to really help," he said. I could see that he had calmed down, so I didn't question it. Instead, I insisted that I go with him. A soft fog was rolling in as we walked the early morning streets. Distant sounds of cars racing up and down main highways could be heard as we made it to the storefronts. In our neighborhood, it was a mixture of Black, Korean, and Haitian that ran the streets, and most of them knew us. Most of the owners were glued to their televisions and watching something about the trial that Mom and Aunt Nicole had been gossiping about that night. We made it to the Haitian bodega and listened as well, right in the doorway. The 4 officers involved in the case have been acquitted by a jury of their peers. Later today, Mayor Tom Brady and Chief Daryl Gates both plan to make statements. I saw a few familiar young men buying groceries and thought of the one that had gotten hurt in the stairwell. They often ran the streets together. "Jamal, one of your boys nearly hurt my mama," I shouted angrily at the gang leader. He turned towards us, surprised by the outburst. Damn, I'm sure it was an accident. She all right now?" Jamal asked. It sounded like a half apology. "Yeah, Mrs. Lau was watching after her, but I don't know about your boy. He was banged up pretty bad," I said, keeping my eyes on the television. "Where was this?" Jamal asked. His sudden interest surprised me, and I panicked and told him. I wasn't sure how he was going to react. Keldon and I didn't get a chance to hear much else as the gang left. Then the entire store erupted in a clamor of yelling and frustration. "It's a load of shit," one of our neighbors shouted. Instantly, the shop owner tried to calm everyone down, but it was clear that the news they had just heard was enough for them to not listen to sound advice. "It ain't right," another one yelled. Another one shouted. Outside, I thought I heard some noise in the streets, too. Others were beginning to act out in their frustrations. I was a kid at the time, but I understood what was happening. I grabbed Keldon's hand and pulled him back from the storefront. "Wait, Ashley, look! It's Aloha," he said excitedly, as he saw a nearby Haitian owner quickly closing shop. In the morning light, it looked like the idol was glowing. The once dreary morning streets of our community were suddenly turning into a protest, as more people came out and started to congregate, each one angrier than the last. My heart was pounding as I stood paralyzed and watched a few people begin to get into fights. "We need that for Mama," Keldon insisted. A second later, gunfire hit the streets. I tried to pull him back, but he didn't listen. He ran towards the store to try and talk to the Haitian, and then right before our eyes, the owner was shot in the chest. I pushed Keldon to the tile floor as more violence erupted and we hid under the store counter. We couldn't even hear ourselves think as the rioting got louder. It only took a few moments for looting and chaos to take shape in the neighborhood, and I knew if we hung around any longer, we could be next. "We need to go back home," I insisted. "The law," Keldon said as he scrambled to find it amidst the wreckage. He tucked the strange idol into his jacket as we ran. The noises didn't stop until we made it back to the house. Mrs. Lau was helping Mom get settled inside, and had made sure to treat her wounds. Keldon didn't say a thing about what we had gotten from the streets, as we heard more violence emerging in our own apartment building. "I must go. Make sure others are safe," Miss Lau told us, and then added, "I'll return to take you to school." Once again, Mom gave us both a good tongue lashing. "What is wrong with you going out like that? You know it ain't safe," she chided us, but she could tell that we were scared. The morning had changed dramatically for all of us, so she guided us into her arms, and she sang a soft, familiar lullaby that she had done for years. I closed my eyes and listened to the melody. "Hush, little one, don't say a word," she began, and I closed my eyes, listening to the melody. I kept Keldon from saying anything and apologized, especially because we had already missed the morning bell for school, and on the news, the riots were starting to spread across our part of South LA. The whole world seemed to be going mad. In our rooms, Keldon took the Loa and muttered, "I hope this thing really works." "I don't even know how it works," I admitted. "Where did you get that?" Mom asked, pushing the door open to look at the strange idol. "It's for you. It's to help you," Keldon said innocently. She was too surprised to even get on to him, and instead picked up the idol and remarked, "I guess we need all the help we can get." I watched as she left with it, looking at the idol like it was some kind of trophy. We didn't bother to follow. Lack of sleep from the night before and all our traveling had made us exhausted. But we didn't have time to sleep. Mrs. Lau was back to take us to school a few minutes later. We didn't even get to pack lunches. "Hurry, hurry," our landlord said, grabbing our backpacks. Outside, we saw more people gathering in the streets. What had only been a few was now a couple of dozen. Some were forcing cars to stop, others looting stores. "Mrs. Lau, I don't think it's safe," I said nervously as we climbed into her old station wagon. She locked the doors, and we pulled out towards the road. I think we made it about 2 to 4 blocks. We saw people starting to riot all around us. Either they were marching to block the streets or they were vandalizing the neighborhood. At the first stoplight, several men started to climb on Mrs. Lau's car, screaming obscenities at her. "Back up!" Keldon screamed. Our landlord nervously tried to push through the crowd, but it wasn't working. We were slowed to a crawl, and it looked like going any further would be suicide. I said a silent prayer, unsure if it would even matter, that we at least got home safe. One of the men fell off the car as we turned around. Mrs. Lau wisely realized that the neighborhood was becoming a war zone. Mrs. Lau hurried us back to our apartment. We parted ways, and we darted inside. "Mama?" We called out to her, explaining we were home because the streets were turning into a war zone. We couldn't find her, no matter where we looked. We searched high and dry in the living room and kitchen, places where she usually loved to be. Where was our mama? We decided to try her bedroom, but we doubted that she would be there. Mama always told us the bedroom is only for sleep and nothing else. We become sloths if we lay in bed all day. We entered her bedroom, and window open, we heard the escalating violence and looting. That's weird. Mama never had her window open, and I mean never. We made our way to the open window, hoping our mama didn't do something like jump. Pitter-patter, 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 pitter-patter. Pitter-patter of footsteps. Like someone was running around in the apartment. Keldon and I looked at each other in confusion and decided to follow the source of the sound, which seemed like it came from the kitchen now. We tiptoed to the kitchen, hoping that it was Mama. The pantry door was open and swinging back and forth. Pitter-patter, pitter. Now coming from behind us in the bathroom, and a croaking groan that was getting louder by the second. We turned around and followed the groan. It was terrifying. It sounded like someone was trying to breathe, but was also choking at the same time. I clutched Keldon's hand, hoping that Mama was just playing some game with us. He called out, "Mama?" Scratch, 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 scratch. Coming from behind the shower curtain. Scratch, 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 scratch. It sounded like someone's nails were being ripped off of their fingers while scratching the wall. What we saw looked like Mama, but we can't be sure. A silhouette of a figure standing there, only it was hunched over and it didn't look human. We could see their fingers moving at light speed, scratching the paint after the wall. Scratch, 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 scratch. "Mama." I slowly opened the curtain. And there she was. She was hunched over and facing the wall, but now still as a statue. We called out to her a few times, but she wouldn't move. Blood on the wall, and some symbol carved into the wall. "Mama?" Keldon took a step towards her when suddenly, crack! She stood upright. She then began to convulse like she was choking and hacking. She kept hacking when suddenly she vomited onto the bathroom floor. Only what came out wasn't vomit. It looked like dead skin. Almost like dead snake skin. We looked up at Mama, and now she had turned towards us. Her eyes were yellow and black. She was drooling a black viscous liquid and smiling at us. She started walking towards us. When I ran, Keldon was right behind me, dashing to grab something from the closet. I screamed for him and got to my room, turning my head to see he had stuffed some things into his backpack. What was he thinking? I grabbed him and I closed the door as my body quivered in fear. We locked the door and hunkered down. But our nightmare had just begun. The riots lasted 5 days. Our whole world turned upside down so quickly. It was a living nightmare. Worst of all because of what was happening to Mama. The hell outside in the streets of LA were almost a calm breeze compared to the storm Keldon and I weathered. After our return home from school and seeing her acting like some kind of animal, we kept to our room, scared senseless. We hid there for hours. For a while, I couldn't make heads or tails of what caused this. Maybe it was the riots, or the exhaustion from being up all night and day. But then I thought of the strange idol that we found and brought home. Could it be the cause? Keldon, the Loa, did you see it anywhere? I asked my brother. I don't remember, I just grabbed what I could, he said, gesturing to the backpack. I checked the outer zipper, seeing that he had grabbed things like food and flashlights, and then shoved it back to him. Seeing as it wasn't helpful, I had no need to check the inside zipper. Then as I pursed my lips together, there was a soft rapping at the door. It made me straighten up and freeze, not even daring to look towards the knob. Keldon did, though, and he was trying his best not to sob as the soft knocking began again. Then we heard a voice. Ashley? Keldon? Are you in there? It was Mama. Almost instinctively, Keldon shot up to go towards the door, but I shot him an evil eye and grabbed him and shoved him down. Then I heard Mama, or whatever had taken over her body, slowly rake her nails against the door. I'm sorry that I scared you earlier. Mama wasn't feeling good, she cooed. Keldon was doing his best not to cry as I held a finger up to my mouth, encouraging him to remain quiet. Y'all need to come out of there. I need to take you to school, Mom said. It was unnerving how normal she sounded. It made me question everything I'd seen that morning, doubt myself. Ashley, you hear me? Mama said in a stern voice. She rattled the handle, but the door refused to budge. Had I been seeing things this morning? A side effect of the chaos that was stretching across all of LA. Please, baby, you're scaring me now, Mama pleaded. She sounded weak, like she had a bad cough. I turned towards the door, not sure what to do. I wanted to help her, that much I knew for sure. Ashley, I won't ask again. You two need to go to school, she barked. Something this time forced me to respond, maybe because I was so frightened of what she would do if I didn't. It's almost lunchtime. We can't go to school this late. Besides, it's dangerous outside. I wanted to sound brave, but it came out of my throat like a weak whisper. There was a long silence from the other side of the door. I saw shadows move in and out of the light that peeled out from under the door. She was shuffling her feet, thinking of a response. At least come out and get something to eat then. Y'all been in there all day, she said, in the most pleasant of tones. We'll come out in a minute, I replied. All right. I'm going to start working on some sandwiches then, she replied. For a moment, I wondered if she was bluffing and hoping that we would open the door, but surprisingly, a moment later, she'd left down the stairs to the kitchen, giving Keldon and I a moment to breathe. What happened to her? My little brother asked as he squeezed my hand. I thought about the Loa we'd brought home, and what Aunt Naomi had said, that it protected her. Maybe we had gotten the wrong kind of idol. This must be some kind of black magic spell. I told you we shouldn't have gotten that thing, I chided him. I was just trying to help, he spat back. I know, I'm sorry, but we just need to go find help. Maybe Aunt Naomi will know what to do, I suggested. Just as I finished those words, we heard what sounded like a bottle smashing to the side of the apartment. The riots were getting worse. We can't go anywhere, we're trapped, Keldon said as he began to sob. I slid across the floor and held him, trying to think. We couldn't stay in this room forever. Maybe we could try to help Mama on our own. Come on, I said, as I took his hand and looked towards the door. We need to find that Loa and smash it, I decided. He nodded, and we moved towards the door together. My hands felt clammy as I prepared to turn the knob and added, we need to stay close to one another. Go together to the kitchen, and while she's making us lunch, one of us sneak to find it. He nodded as I turned it, looked down the stairs, and I could hear Mama below, in the kitchen, with the oven going. He nodded as I turned it, looking down the stairs. I could hear Mama down below in the kitchen. The oven was going. We walked down the stairs, hearing her sing a familiar lullaby. The way it came out of her was so soft and slow, it was almost chilling to the bone. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. We were nearly at the bottom step as she finished the next verse. And if that mockingbird won't sing. She paused as she heard us at the bottom step and turned to smile as she finished flipping some grilled cheese. She looked like our Mama. She was dressed the same too, but it all felt wrong. This couldn't be her. Sit, children, she said excitedly. Kelton and I did as instructed, watching as she plated the sandwiches and slid them towards us. Well, eat. Kelton tried not to make a worried face. Mama, I can't have cheese. What do you mean? Nonsense, she said. The last part of her word almost sounded like a hiss. It made my hair stand up. Kelton is lactose intolerant, I explained. Her right eye twitched. For a second I saw her pupil dilate and expand. Of course, yes, of course, she said, as she scooped the food away and went into the fridge and started to hum again. Kelton and I exchanged a worried look. Mama hasn't been doing well. I need you two to keep me on my toes, she said, as she took out a block of ham and placed it on the table. Then she got a knife. I held my breath as she began to slice, humming again. It sounded even less human than it had a moment ago. Now I need you two to eat up if you're going to be big and strong like me, she whispered. Kelton took the finished sandwich, and I nodded for him to eat it. Both of us bit into the bread at the same time. Something about the meat tasted awful. Was it sour? Mold? I opened and spit out the bite in disgust, looking down. To my disgust, I saw that the tadpoles were wriggling their way out of the food, and I dropped it and instinctively let out a vomiting noise. Mama was still holding the knife, looking at us. A single tear fell down her cheek. You don't like what I fixed you? She asked in a robotic tone. Kelton was just as bad. Long tapeworms slithering out of the table, and both of us nervously got a drink of our juice. Mama, we're scared, Kelton said. She smiled again. The knife inching closer to him. There's nothing to be scared about, baby. That madness outside isn't going to hurt you. Her eyes were twitching again. I could hardly explain what I thought was happening. It looked like her skin was stretching beyond what she could handle, like something else was inside her body and struggling to get out. No, Mama, I'm scared of you, Kelton said bravely. Oh, baby, come here, she said, opening her arms. Before I had the chance to stop him, Kelton ran towards her, and they embraced. I stood up and watched as she hugged him tight. She still had the knife in her hand, as she squeezed tighter and started to sing. And if that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. I heard Kelton start to have trouble breathing, and I tried to move towards her. Mama shot me a look that sent shivers down my spine. And if that diamond ring turns brass, Mama's gonna buy you a looking glass. At the last syllable, I heard Keldon gasping, and I too held my breath. She was strangling him. The knife was almost at the back of his throat. And if that looking glass gets broke... Mama, stop! I screamed. For a brief moment, I saw the eyes of our mother return. She let go of Keldon, and he collapsed to the floor. His face was nearly blue. The knife dropped from her hand. I grabbed Keldon. He was on fire. No, he said as he got his breath. He could barely see straight. Mom was looking at us, both in confusion, horror, as it dawned on her what she had done. You need to run, she said in a weak voice. For a few split seconds, she had managed to give us a message. I grabbed my brother and obeyed as she tried to grab the knife again, this time coming after me. I screamed as we pushed out of the apartment to the stairwell, hoping anyone was awake to hear. She didn't follow us outside, but I knew that we couldn't look back. Our mama was gone, and we weren't safe there anymore. What do we do now? Keldon asked as we made it to the ground floor. I heard another car alarm go off from a looter outside, and I squeezed his hand tight. Naomi will know what to do. Come on, I said. We were walking out of a fire into a war zone. But it was the only path we had left. It's one thing to hear violence on the street, and another to live it. I've seen South LA go through bad times. None were at the level of those 5 days. The sham trial had caused the people to understandably rise in outrage, and stepping out into the dark alley behind our apartment with my baby brother after our own mother had nearly killed us, it was like going from an inferno into a living hell. It was just past noon on that second day of the riots. There were tons of people, raiding storefronts, stopping cars to loot passers-by, and even some fighting one another. They were marching and going against the riot police, a force of white uniformed soldiers that were excessively violent in trying to quench the crowd. These tactics that were uncalled for and only ignited it even more. But with each pushback, the crowd screamed louder. I squeezed Keldon close to me and kept my head down, trying to move amid the boisterous neighbors. I knew at any moment someone could pull a gun, a knife, or even worse, the police could begin to use force to take us down. It was madness. People were stepping on one another, getting trampled, pushing and shoving. The noise was so loud. I heard helicopters overhead. I knew it was the media trying to catch a glimpse of everything. I ran up to an officer, tugging his shirt sleeve to get his attention, but he shoved me away. In fact, he turned away, giving me this look I'll never forget. Like we were pieces of garbage to him. It made me so sick to think that the police were the people I thought we could turn to for help. They were supposed to be the ones who would protect and serve, yet in the midst of this terrifying danger with my mama, we were left alone and met with silence. She had changed from a loving woman to a monster in mere moments, and we had no one to help, no one who cared. The police were the ones using tear gas, batons, and shields. They were actively harassing the rioters. They weren't trying to promote peace, they were trying to promote chaos. Every move was making things worse. Who were we supposed to turn to for help with Mama? It felt impossible to even imagine that we could make it to Naomi's alive. Halfway down the street, the police officer shoved us down, and Keldon hit his head against the pavement. Surprisingly, he didn't bleed, but it was a bad bruise. I dropped down and started to call for help, but no one listened. No one seemed to care. "Ashley, Keldon!" a voice said from the crowd. I looked amid the chaos and saw a familiar face, Jamal. He ran with some of the gangs in the neighborhood, and Mama told us to steer clear of him, since he did who knows what in the streets. But this time, as he rushed over to our side, I took his hand and stood up, checking Keldon again before saying, "We need to get to my auntie's house." Jamal heard gunfire from the direction we had just come and took us by the hand. Thankfully, he didn't ask questions. He just guided us down the alleyway that he had just appeared from. "Stay close. You should have never gone anywhere without me or my boys. Out here, all we got is each other," he advised us as we ducked into the next block. More rioters were here, smashing up cars and burning what little was left to destroy in the streets. The police were actively attacking the rioters and inciting more violence. It was madness, and I knew what drove it. Inequality, despair, hate, and anger. Jamal had the same fire in his eyes, but he kept his focus and moved towards the fire exit. "You gotta go through here," he told me. Kelton was quiet and almost out of it, mesmerized by experiences we were going through, either in shock or just paralyzed by fear. I had to keep him close as we pushed through the dilapidated old building in the next street block. Here it was quiet, and a quick check of the signs told me that we were almost there. Jamal shoved us towards the next crossroads and muttered, "Y'all should take cover with your auntie for a while. Don't be coming back out here. You might wind up like them." Not far from us, I saw a few people that looked like they had been trampled by the protesters. I swallowed a gulp of air. "What about you?" Keldon finally asked, as we got to the steps of Auntie Naomi's flat. I turned to Jamal expectantly to see if maybe he was going to stay. Jamal shrugged and said to us, "We finna protect you, and everyone else from those crooked cops in the system." I could see the gleam of his Glock on his belt, and I knew that he intended to join the anarchy the moment we were safe. "Come on, let's get inside," I told my baby brother, watching as Jamal ran towards the sound of the riots. It was past 4 o'clock, and we stepped towards the voice box for the flat, pushing for the operator to call Auntie. I still couldn't believe we were doing this, but I knew that there wasn't much else left to save Mama. Auntie Naomi answered the door and looked at us in shock. "What are you two doing out in this mess?" I couldn't help but break down in tears and fall into her arms. She hurried us inside her home, her television blaring and some rice cooking on the stove. Once I took a moment to regain composure, I told her everything that had happened, starting with the Loa. I'll never forget the look on her face as I explained in detail how Mama had been acting. My aunt is a strong woman. Her and Mama had been through a lot back in the day. But I could tell she had never heard of such a story like the one I gave her. She was frightened. Still, it was worrisome as I kept looking out towards the streets. "The Loa. Do you have it?" she asked. I shook my head no. "Without it, we are doomed. The spirit can control others. It has a hold on your mother until we can destroy it. It can move from soul to soul as long as the Loa is intact," Naomi warned. She did her best not to show it, though, and told us both to relax as she finished dinner. Keldon was fidgety, not even bothering to sit down. He was acting a bit odd, staring at the corner of the wall in silence, but I knew that when he was little, he would always stare at the ground in silence when he was frightened. Still, it was worrisome as I kept looking out towards the streets. She called the police, though, to warn them about our Mama, and the officer on the line claimed that he would come by that evening, but we never saw anyone. Instead, it seemed like outside things were getting worse. Most of the protesting had gone a few blocks over, but I could still hear it. I didn't feel safe, especially with how Naomi was acting. She kept touching her own idol, praying to it for protection. I could hardly understand how one was safe and the other was evil, but I guess it didn't matter right then. And then as we all sat down for a meal, we heard it. The low, guttural shriek from down the road. I literally jumped from my chair. Naomi instantly told us to make sure the windows were closed. I recognized the scream. It was Mama. Had she followed us here? It was almost dark. A few of the street lights gave the gloomy roads of Los Angeles the ethereal glow about them as I snuck a peek between the blinds. I could see Mama's silhouette as she moved down the street alone and feral. She wasn't moving the way a person should. It was like watching a marionette doll on strings. Every few feet her body buckled forward and she gave another shriek. Was she calling to us? "What do we do?" I asked, my hands trembling. "Turn down the lights. Stay quiet," Naomi ordered us. From a block over, we heard the sound of police sirens approaching. Mama stopped under the streetlight, her eyes gleaming like blinding pearls as the would-be attackers approached. There were 5 of them total, but it was clear from the way she was acting they wouldn't stand a chance. One of them wielded a baton. Several had guns, taunting her with it. But she hardly even blinked. She rushed towards them, grabbing them with long fingernails as she shoved him to the pavement. Another tried to grab her off of him, but she was too quick. She spun around quickly, and I saw what looked like a black tar spew out of her mouth. The man screamed in agony as his face began to melt. A bullet grazed her shoulder, but she hardly noticed. A few others hastily pulled their weapons. More tasers and guns. I held my breath, terrified of what might happen if she was hurt. I knew she wasn't herself, but I was also more frightened than ever that we might lose her right then and there. She stood up and leapt towards the first man, shoving him against the light pole. He made a sound like she had just broken his spine, and she twisted his gun towards the second man. The first bullet split his skull apart, and the second tore through his abdomen. One man sliced at her stomach, but it made no difference. Not even the pain stopped her. Naomi and Keldon and I watched between the blinds in stunned silence as she finished off the others. Her teeth gripped at her final attacker, shredding his face as she attacked like a wild dog. She was a monster. And these pathetic officers were just prey. When he fell to the side of his comrades, Mama was staring down at him like he was fresh meat. But then her gaze turned towards the flat. She made eye contact with us. I'll never forget that look. It reminds me of those surreal nightmares. They were too scary to be true. When you pinch yourself and you realize it was all a dream, this wasn't a dream. It was reality. Naomi instantly pulled us away from the window. "Get in the basement, now," she ordered. We didn't argue with the orders, and we fled. Down in her cellar, it was musty and dark, and we held our noses as she slammed the door behind us and bolted it shut. We were alone. I listened as Mama slammed her body against the front door. "Naomi!" she screamed at the top of her lungs in a visceral, guttural tone. I held Keldon close and looked through the cellar peephole. Naomi was grabbing her charms and beads and starting to chant. It sounded like something she would sing to us as children in a Cajun dialect, but she was grabbing her herbs from her kitchen and sprinkling them on the floor as Mama kept trying to get in. She was hoping her own idol would protect her from whatever controlled Mama. "You shall not enter here, foul spirit," she shouted to her sister. Mama made the bizarre, gurgling sound, and behind me I heard Keldon catch his breath. Then the door smashed open and I saw her come in, the feral wild woman, ready to attack Naomi. Her aunt tossed the herbs into her face and scurried towards the kitchen, chanting louder and louder and louder as Mama's body jerked and seized up. I held my breath now as well, thinking for a moment that it would work. Then I saw Mama lurch forward and push Naomi to the wall out of sight. What followed sounded like pure hell. Her auntie screamed at the top of her lungs. She begged to God. She even begged to the devil, I think. I saw her arms flail and her legs twitch, and I heard the gnashing of teeth and the sound of bones breaking, and then her body went still. Mama stood up, and she had completely collapsed Naomi's chest cavity, and all we could hear was the faint whimper of our aunt's breathing as she struggled to stay alive. And then this monster looked towards the basement where we hid. "I need my children!" the demon screamed. I pushed away, and I screamed for Keldon to follow me out the back. We ran into the night. It was the early morning of May 2nd, 1992, and my brother Keldon and I had just seen our own mother brutally attack our aunt. It's hard to even find the right words to express how frightened I felt. I was scrambling in the dark, hardly able to keep myself from fainting in fear. Keldon was at my side, stoically silent as he clutched his backpack to his chest and kept my pace to escape Naomi's apartment. Somehow we made it out and into the backyards of the housing project. The quiet eeriness no longer comforting. All around us we could hear the sound of gunfire, sirens, and people shouting. Going out to the streets would be suicide. We also heard helicopters and the sound of air raid sirens. Military were making their way down the streets, likely to use extreme force against the protesters. We needed to find shelter and to find help. We took a few precarious steps forward as the sun came up over the housing project. I got sight of the community center that we had visited only a few days ago and thought of Pastor Kenneth. He had the knowledge and skills to save our mother's soul. Come on, I told my brother as we moved closer to the steps. At first, Keldon fought, wanting instead to go home. He refused to walk towards the community center. This isn't going to help. Nothing is, don't you get that? None of them care about us, Ash, he screamed. I wanted to argue with him, but I was so drained both physically and emotionally, all I could do was squeak a soft rebuttal. We have to try. I finally pulled him into the center, but he rebelled as much as he could. Inside the old building, Keldon slumped in one of the first pews as I searched for Pastor Ken. He squirmed and whined a little, complaining about how much pain he was in from all the running, but I didn't bother listening. I was on a mission to save our mother. I then spotted Miss Lang, nursing a wound as though someone had bashed a bottle against her head, and then recognized a few other people from our community, including Jamal and his gang. Ash, what are you doing here? I thought you went to your aunt's, Jamal said as he kept his weapon to his side. The fact that he was armed didn't frighten me, though. Instead, I was more concerned about what Mom would do when she came here. They were all in danger. Near the back of the church, Ken appeared dressed and ready for early morning prayer service, even though no one was going to come in this war zone. His eyes filled with concern over us as I ran to him. Ash, what are you doing here? The streets are not safe right now, he chided me as he looked at all the others. He was clear they all had come here, their last stand for safety in the chaos that was brewing beyond these walls. Father, please, the devil has taken a hold of our mama, I begged him. I rambled for a few minutes to explain about the Loa and the strange behavior she had exhibited since then. Father Ken looked between me and Keldon and then ushered us towards the back. What you speak of, if it is the truth, is not some ordinary demon. I didn't wait for him to finish. Just those simple words told me what we thought of our experience. You think we made this up? This is a joke to you? I shouted. A few of the other neighbors that were in the chapel heard us, and Father Ken did his best to back up his words. You must understand. I don't mean that at all, it's just that this is very unheard of, he explained. Jamal and his companions moved up to us, intrigued by the fiery interchange of words. Yo, Ash, is Father Ken giving you trouble? Jamal asked. Keldon was holding back tears. You're no different than the rest. I told you, Ashley, I told you, he shouted. Father Ken looked saddened by the words as Jamal and his men surrounded me like a protective shield. Jamal, please. I've known you since you were a young boy. Did I not let you into my home? This is a house of God. Please, he said. Outside we heard the sound of a firebomb, and I shook internally. How long would it be before Mama was here? Please, Father, you have to believe me. The demon could be here any minute, I begged him. My hands were trembling. Ash, you serious? What's going on? Jamal asked. Then we heard that same guttural shriek and froze. It's here. I turned and looked towards the front of the community center where Miss Lang and a few of the other neighbors had huddled and ran to them. Get out of here! Go! She'll kill you! I screamed. They all looked at me in befuddlement, and I turned to Jamal for some help. Our eyes met, and his gaze turned to ice. You heard the girl! Get to the back rooms! Miss Lang and the others obediently fled as we heard the scream get louder. What the hell is that? One of Jamal's boys asked. Jakeem, Devar, Kev, go watch the other exits, Jamal ordered as he turned to me. He pulled his gun out while his eyes focused on the front door. Now tell me what the hell's going on. Father Ken was at my side too. His skeptical demeanor vanished in a heartbeat when he heard the screams, and he said, Put your weapon away, Jamal. He'll do no good against this evil. Yeah, neither will you, Keldon screamed from one of the pews. He was acting like a misbehaved brat, but I was too exhausted to argue with him. I focused on Father Ken and grabbed his shirt, begging again. Isn't there anything that you can do? I asked. He looked uncertain as the noises grew louder and muttered, I am not ordained for a sacrament of exorcism. I do not know if the ritual will work. A man was tossed into the front of the chapel, his abdomen nearly severed as we saw the strange silhouette of my puppeteered mother approach. "Well, you need to try something quick, or there's finna be a shootout with this demon," Jamal snapped. I jumped in front of him, shaking my head. "No, we can't do that. It's my mother. It's still her inside. I know it." Jamal held his weapon up as Mama came into the vestibule. Her wild look even more inhuman now. She was almost too far gone. "This evil creature will kill us all if we don't act," Father Ken said, urging us to the back of the church. Keldon stayed frozen, though, refusing to flee. "You're a charlatan? A fraud? You can't help her! Ash! Let Jamal kill her! I hate her! I want it over!" he screamed angrily. "If it takes one more step, I sure will, little man," Jamal said, keeping his Glock aimed at Mama's heart. "Miss Johnson, you've been an idol for all of us for so long, but you take one more step towards these kids, and I'm gonna end you." She contorted her head, looking at me for a moment. I saw a hint of innocence in her eyes. "I need my children," she said in the softest voice. "Jamal, take them to the storage rooms," the priest urged. "Only our faith in God can end this pure evil." Mama took a step forward. I turned to look at her, feeling weak and powerless. Maybe it would be better to just give in, I thought. Then I felt a strong arm snatch me away. Jamal guided me down the pews as he took me and Keldon to where the others were hiding, and I could only catch a glimpse of Mama and Father Ken. He looked as pale as a ghost. Understandable, given he had no idea what he was facing. But immediately he began to attempt the exorcism. Keldon screamed, fighting with Jamal as he shouted, "Mama's gonna get hurt! You have to stop him!" "Soul of Christ, sanctify me," Ken began, as he raised up the cross that was dangling on his neck. Mama lunged forward, spitting forth the same black venom towards him. He kept moving forward, trying his best not to be afraid. "Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me." I heard Mama make this strange, guttural noise as she lurched and began to spasm. I didn't know for sure what was happening, so I peered out to have a look. She was writhing on the floor, but the sacrament didn't seem to be working. Ken kept trying, reciting more holy words as he prayed to God, his hands trembling as he finished the rites. "Water from the side of Christ, wash me. Passion of Christ, strengthen me." Mama was moaning in pain, hardly able to move. Then I heard a noise from behind me. Keldon was shrieking. I turned to him, in shock, surprised to see that he ripped from Kev and Damar's hands, trying to stop Ken. "No! You cannot do this!" my brother yelled. And then I watched as he lunged on Father Kenneth. He scratched at Father Ken's face, pushing the man down as Mama lay frozen on the floor. It took me a minute to register what was happening, and then I looked towards the bag that my brother was carrying with him. The bag he was carrying this whole time. I emptied the bag as quick as possible. My heart dropped when I saw the Loa buried there. He had the evil idol all along. I turned and I watched as Keldon used his bare hands to break Ken's neck, and I heard the sound of his windpipe shattering. That's when I knew. Mama had been the puppet on a string. The real demon was right in front of me. Keldon turned to look at me and began convulsing exactly like Mama did earlier. He kept hacking away until he finally froze and tilted his head back. What came out this time wasn't snakeskin. He was a massive serpent, a python. It was bigger than Keldon himself, and it started moving quickly towards Jamal and his boys. They opened fire on the serpent, but it did nothing. Keldon turned to me and smiled. One of Jamal's boys was massacred by the serpent, and the other four grabbed Keldon. It took all of Jamal's gang to hold Keldon down, and even then my little brother fought with the strength of 10 men. Everything had happened so fast, I was still in shock, struggling to process it all. Then it all came rushing back on top of me. The screams, the blood, Father Kenneth, Mother. My eyes darted to the front of the community center where Miss Lau and her husband were helping her to a pavilion to rest. She looked as pale as a ghost, and as I got closer, I realized her body seemed nearly paralyzed. Kenneth was breathing ragged, crawling away from Keldon as the gang held him back. The demon. The demon is not of hell. It is far worse, he said, as I came to his side. I thought about what Naomi had said. The Loa. We have to destroy it, I said, as I looked toward the backpack. The hiding place Keldon had cleverly used throughout our nightmarish journey. Suddenly he screamed and his demonic eyes looked straight at me. Destroy that Loa, and your brother will never see the light of day again, Keldon snarled. Except I knew it wasn't my brother speaking anymore. This was an evil worse than I could possibly imagine. Father Ken reached for the crucifix around his neck, his hand barely able to stay up, but it was too late. Keldon let out another guttural shriek, and I watched in horror as Ken's body began to writhe. The wounds where the demon had attacked him were now sizzling with acid. The serpent now had its sights on the pastor. It wrapped its body around Ken, suffocating the life out of him as I watched in abject horror. Damar pulled out his gun, pointed it at the pastor, and let a single bullet finish the job. Better for him not to suffer, Damar said coldly. The others didn't object. Instead, their focus was on Keldon. They managed to take him to the storeroom and close the door, leaving only a plexiglass window between us and this abomination, and for a brief second I thought that Keldon would try to attack again. His eyes shone with a fiery death, but instead he leaned against the glass and hissed, Release me, and we can make a bargain for your mother's soul. I looked towards Mama, seeing how she was just barely holding on. What have you done to her? I screamed. All I seek is my freedom, child. This body does not suit my purposes, the demon answered. Miss Lau jumped up and moved towards us, her eyes full of panic. He lies! Do not trust this monster, Ashley! What do you mean? I asked. You spoke of the Loa? I once prayed to those false idols. Where is it? She replied. Do not listen to her, Keldon shrieked. My hands balled up into fists. I was tired of being manipulated. Jakeem, Kev, can you watch him? I asked. The two young men nodded, and I followed Miss Lau to the backpack. I heard my little brother scream as I reached inside and took out the Loa. It was not hot, but it burned my hands. Miss Loa's husband and the shop owner's spouse came over as well, all equally intrigued. This is to never be used without sacrifice. How could you be so foolish? Mr. Lau chided me. They didn't know, his wife told him. What can we do? I asked. I wanted to be brave, to save both Mama and Keldon. A demon such as this can't simply be destroyed by sheer force. Willpower and strength must come into play, Miss Lau commented, as she examined the idol. But first, the Loa must be destroyed, Mr. Lau confirmed. The monster that was in my brother's body kept shrieking for me to stop, but I didn't listen. Instead, I grabbed the burning Loa and ran towards the stairs. I could only think of one place to go, the upper windows that overlooked the streets. And as I opened the panel and heard the riots and protests below, I wondered briefly if the demon had awoke because of the violence that was stirring in Los Angeles. I could see the police and the National Guard pushing back, containing the riots, but none of them were here to help me or anyone in our community. I had to do this on my own. I could feel the idol growing hotter as I raised it up, and then smashed it down to the streets below. It felt like a boulder, scattering apart amid the protesters the way the tear gas would. Immediately, I felt like a weight had lifted from my chest, but the battle was only half won. I made it into the church again, checking on Mama and seeing if she was slowly returning to herself. Now all that was left was Keldon, without the Lord to return to. The demon must find a new host. Otherwise, it will be in your brother forever, Miss Lau commented. It said it didn't want to be inside him, so why can't it just leave? I asked. A vessel must offer itself up. Without the Loa, it cannot survive for long. It can puppet others, but in order to be free, it must have a host. This is the way of Bakala Baku, a soul for a soul, Miss Lau said. My hands trembled as I thought of all the destruction the demon could cause if it was allowed to roam free. Even in Keldon's body, it held immense strength, but if I could get it inside me, maybe I could end the nightmare once and for all. Let him go. I can be his vessel, I said bravely. Inwardly, I was scared. I knew to defeat this demon, I would have to give up everything of myself, and even my life. But for my family, it would be worth it. Ash, what's gotten into you? Damar asked as he stood in my way. I can't let Keldon suffer anymore. This was my fault from the beginning. I should have trusted in God. Jamal shook his head negatively, preventing me as well. God didn't have nothing to do with this. You made it this far on your own, girl. We all did these past few days. Nobody came to save us. We can save ourselves, Jamal said firmly as he looked towards Miss Lau. You said it needs a willing vessel? How about 4? He said. His gang hung on his every word. I was stunned by his words. The demon writhed in the locked room, eager to be able to begin the transfer. Yes, you will do. They will all do nicely, it hissed. No, don't do this, I urged him. Was he aware of what would happen? To all of them? Miss Lau, keep her back, we got this, Jamal decided. His other gang members opened the door and Keldon stared eye to eye with the gang leader. I'll do it then, he said. I knew he didn't want to second-guess himself. We all watched in complete fascination as the darkness that was in my brother pushed its way out. Like a shadowy version of the snake that we had seen twice now, the spirit zigzagged across the church. Keldon screamed, and the demon made its sound of 100 different wails. It pushed its way straight into Jamal's chest and then towards the others. Their bodies briefly hovered as it was strung up like a puppet. For a moment, the gang lay on the still floor. Then, we heard the demonic laughter. It filled the church. They rose in unison. You fools. The power I now hold to create more chaos, destruction. This city will be brought to ruin by my hands, it shrieked. It turned towards Damar, Kev, and Jakeem. Come, servants. Dispose of these meddlers, it screamed. Above us, the community center seemed to shake. It wasn't an earthquake, though. It was coming from the immense evil in front of us. I will destroy this city. You vile creatures can't help but to hate. And I will consume, the dark voice said, growing louder as the building shook, and I covered Miss Lau. It looked like we were done for. The shopkeeper's wife knew this was the end of days. Tears began streaming down her cheek as she explained, if the Bakalabaku gets out, the riots will continue. The violence will continue. Chaos will continue. It's gasoline being thrown onto a raging flame. The gang began to move together, all mimicking each other's actions. I thought of all that we had lost trying to save Mama, trying so hard to find help in this broken system. Nothing had saved us, not the police, not the church, and now it looked like even our community would break apart. And then I saw the light of hope in their eyes. Something was changing. These men were fighting the evil that tried to hold them down. The building kept shaking, the air filled with a malevolent force of nature like a storm inside. The demon was fighting with all its strength to keep them under its thumb. The 3 of them knew what to do. They would stand up for all of us today. They aimed their weapons at Jamal, at each other. No, I command you, it screamed as loud as it could. It was over in just a few seconds. The blood spattering against the walls as they finished each other off. The storm collapsed instantly. The portions of the church it had torn off fell to the ground. The screams melted into the abyss below. I pulled Keldon from the corpses, got to Mama's side, my entire body trembling and wondering if that ordeal was over. How did they overcome the demon? I whispered. I could still hear its screams as it sank to the pit of hell. Their will was strong. Your mother, no, your entire family lost their way. But now, thanks to these brave men, our community's strength, you found yourself again, Miss Law said, as Mama reached out and touched my hand. Ashley, baby, what happened? She asked gently. I thought of how much we lost and couldn't even find the words to explain to her. Outside, I heard the riots grow even more. Even though there was chaos on the outside still, we found peace on the inside, amongst each other. News reports said that Jamal and his gang were involved in a raid on the church during the riots. But I told Mama a different story. One of how 4 brave young men did everything for us. For the community. This community is strong together, she often would tell me afterwards. We take care of our own and protect those we love. As the great Maxine Waters once said, I don't intend to be excluded or dismissed. We have an awful lot to say. My nightmare ends here, but I still often reflect on those dark days and all that we learned from them. How we had to find faith in each other. We need that kind of faith and hope these days. When you turn on the news and you see what the world is like, violence returning, darkness, that reminds me of how we only have each other to depend on. My hope now is that I can impart that to others, help them see in darkness. There are also those that shine light. Even when the odds are against us, there's hope. Hope that we have each other to lean on. No matter how hard they try to tear us down, we stay as one until the end of time. We are a family. And like I said at the beginning, that can be everything you ever need. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video. Or listening to tonight's podcast on the podcast, if you're listening to that there at Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you could happen to listen to podcasts. I wanted to remind you guys also that my wife sells loose leaf tea at etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocle-tea. She has different teas, including Creepypasta teas, and you can get a MrCreepyPasta tea. If you ask for a dabbing sticker, she also has those. And of course, I wanted to give a big thank you to everyone who checks out patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta and supports the show, keeps the light on, gives me treats for my now 2 cats, both Hylas and Hercules. Both of them are a handful. And especially a big thank you to Saha, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Mazikeen, Ken Lando Higuchi, Chompski, Nico kaeo, Tristain Pelton, Stephen VanHuss, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, G. Weevil 3, TheRedOakShieldVirus, Hades' Nephew, Carter Barenfanger, Dr. Strawberry, Jordan Wayne Deckard, Bradney Leipe, The Government Monitoring System, Ann Charron, rumblefox, AcidSystem, Mike Bullock, Rafael Rodriguez, Dan Sweet, Mad Marstomp, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Sean Mills, Brian Arce, Cryptic Nightmares, Shadow Morningstar, Somber Puppet, Brianna Wright, Someone You Love, Said the King 56, Bad Honey, S-Man, Kiri the Sloth, Patrick Schoolmeister, Thomas Burgett, Barbara Maceo, Bobby Carmen, Liam Newman, The Homeless Bird 93, Sky Harbor, Caleb Dougal, Last Blade Song, Eliminator 86, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, and Corey X Kenshin. A big thank you to all of you guys and everybody down there in the description. I really can't thank you guys enough for supporting the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And everybody who listens. Sweet dreams.